So OpenAI just released their first truly agentic AI product into the wild, and it's called Operator. I've got access and I'll give you a live demo on what it can really do. Meanwhile, the US is further restricting the export of Nvidia chips to China, hoping this will further slow them down. So as Elon is throwing pot shots at Sam Altman and this $500 billion data center, China's saying, hold my beer, buddy, dropping models that cost $5 million to do the equivalent of what the US is spending $150 million on. And the race for AI agents that can actually do things in the real world has been kicked into overdrive. And it is not just DeepSeek, it is TikTok's parent company, ByteDance as well. And by the way, their agentic AI is better too. So let's dive into that, starting with Operator. Here's what the UI looks like. You've got a bunch of predefined tasks across dining, delivery, local services, shopping, and news. Let's say I've got a bunch of folks coming to town. I want to find the top 5 restaurants in Austin, Texas that would be under $100 per person. Once you kick this off, you'll notice that it'll open this basically a virtual machine. You're using a Chrome browser remotely, and you can see the agent is going to do interesting things with it. This is going to restaurants. It's going to search for Austin, Texas. And as you're waiting, you can see the various steps that it's going through. It's scrolling. And at any point, I can click on take control and actually take control. So here you can see that it's looking for advanced filter option. It's reviewing the top restaurant listings and actually trying to filter and winnow it down to find something that is budget friendly. I don't know in which world less than $100 is budget friendly, but I'm gonna just roll with it for now. And now you can see that it's opening up multiple browser tabs for the various restaurants, and it's going to review the details for them. So now you can see it's in the restaurants looking for prices. Unfortunately, it looks like it's not going to find many prices. So you can see it's scrolling reviews for pricing information. It's going to now try and infer prices based on reviews and analyzing them. That's kind of cool. All right, so here's what it came back with. Let me close this window down. It gave me 3 different restaurants. Really good rating, looked at basically the star price range, and wherever it had uncertainty, I like that it's saying that it's over $100. By the way, what's also cool here is that inside of the various websites that they do have access to, you can specify custom prompts. So for example, let's say you like shopping at Instacart for your groceries, you could say is like, I prefer organic options when possible. If you have other dietary restrictions or things like that, you could mention that here as well. All right, so I'm going to say meme generator, and I'm going to say create a funny meme about the US trying to slow down AI progress in China by restricting access to Nvidia chips. And then China claps back by dropping a soda model that costs only 5.5 mil versus the US spending 150 mil. Let's just see what happens. All right, cool. So it's going to the meme generation website. Great job. Click make a meme. Now it's going to have to assess the right type of meme. Okay, surprise Pikachu. That's actually a really good option in this case. So I'm kind of impressed. Okay, there we go. I got the template. Now let's see what kind of copy it comes up with. That's actually pretty funny. That's actually pretty darn good. And there we go. And there you have it. We just made a meme. That's pretty fun, right? Okay, so let's say you're hungry and you want to order, let's say, butter chicken, garlic naan, and just the classic stack mango lassi. Under, let's say, $35. Let's see what it does. All right, I'm going to full screen this again so you can see what's going on. All right, it's going to Uber Eats website. And there we go. It's searching for dish, butter chicken. It's smart enough to know that those were restaurant options. And now it's going to look at, let's see how it actually does. Okay, naan and curry. I have definitely eaten there before. I think it's going to have a hard time finding something under $35. So yeah, butter chicken right there, $26.99 it looks like. That's not what I asked for. There we go. Good. It's closing the pop-up. Actually, it didn't actually add it to the cart. Again, this is a research preview, so it's not perfect. It's looking for the garlic naan. So I think what probably happened there is that like, oh, it's interesting. Buy one, get one free. Cool. Sure. Okay, it's closing the aloo naan pop-up. Good, good, good. Now let's see what it's going to do. It's going to find the mango lassi. Yeah, there you go. It's smart that it found the missing item, that there was no butter chicken. And let's see if it can figure it out. There we go. It's reassessing the chicken curries. Good job. Go find the butter chicken, buddy. There we go. So my immediate observation here is like if you're busy doing something else and you're just having this task queued up for you, that's kind of cool, right? Like this was the promise of the Rabbit R1, like these large action models that would take action on your behalf. And of course, everyone freaked out when they realized the lackluster security of just essentially opening up, your own private sessions in somebody else's computer. And so I think those are still things people need to keep in mind and think about in this case, and may not be totally comfortable with, let's say, logging into their emails right out the gate. But maybe you'd be okay with like Uber Eats deliveries or something like that. So we're looking at the total. Yeah, it's $41.97. That's just San Francisco for you. What's also cool is you can kick off a bunch of these tasks in parallel and just leave them running. So the last example I want to give you is basically booking a flight, let's just say from ATX to LAX on Friday. Now, this is a task that I actually absolutely despise doing every time you have to do it. I usually go to like Google Flights and then I compare a bunch of things. I'm like, oh, do I want to fly business? Okay, it's a longer flight. Maybe I'm going to go business. Oh, it's short. Maybe I want something on Southwest. And you go through this like multi-step process and you could just specify your preferences in the custom instructions for, let's say, booking.com. And it would just do that for you and be like, hey, here's a couple of itineraries. Which one do you like? So I think that's the future that I'm really excited about. But this is a very early glimpse towards that future. Let's see, this model is still working slowly but surely. Going to type in, there we go. It's like clearing input. There we go. No, not Kazakhstan. Okay, so it realizes it's Austin. Okay, so that's cool. It's smart enough to realize I gave it the wrong airport designation. And then it's going to do LAX, which is actually correct. And then I said this Friday, so it's going to set it for this Friday, which I hope it figures out. Oh, picked next Friday. But so here's where I could like pause and take control very quickly. And, at any point I can take control and then tell it what I've done. So for example, let me just show you how to do that. So let's say this, I actually wanted it for this Friday. There we go. And then I say fixed to this Friday, please proceed. Now it's going to continue going down the various steps. It looks at the screen. And according to OpenAI, you don't even need to give it context on like, hey, here's what I took over and did, but it's good practice. Probably just makes things a little bit easier for them too, to be honest, as they're improving this research preview product. A bunch of interesting label data for them to get. User interventions and exactly what they did and a quick caption of what action was taken by the user rather than having to infer all of that. All right, there we go. It found a flight for me. It says that it's going to cost $399. Let's say I want to upgrade to business class. Let's see if it does that. There we go. Business class flight $589, rather reasonable. And this is where I would say, yes, book it. It would ask me to fill in my details. And for the future, it would have that. But every time it reaches this action step, especially when it's making a payment, it asks you. Now, of course, it is a research preview. I'm sure we're going to see some instances where this doesn't work out perfectly, but I'm pretty impressed overall. I'm imagining a future where you're able to talk to your phone or your agent as you're doing 10 other things, or you're busy with something else. Maybe you're driving and it's just doing this stuff for you in the background. That could be very powerful. So now, of course, none of this is new. Claude actually rolled this out as computer use late last year. And really the idea here is rather than building custom tools that LLMs have to use, can't you just have a visual language model take control of a computer? Click around and basically figure out how to count vertical and horizontal pixels on a screen and be able to reliably click and decide what to do next. And so I think this future is going to be very exciting because it'll look a lot more like you might record a Loom video for, let's say, a virtual assistant. Hey, here's my standard operating procedure for doing a certain task. In this case, let's say it's a very menial task of like filling out some vendor request form and basically cleaning up a bunch of vendor data. And you just ask it to do this thing of like list and verify each field as you complete the form in window 2. Super, super easy. It's going to take a screenshot, proceed, take a screenshot, proceed, iterate. You can see here the coordinates of where the mouse is moving to, the actions that it's taking, so on and so forth. So here's a really cool example that I came across that isn't very accurate, but kind of gives you a sampling of what you could do with these type of systems. So you could tell Claude, hey, Look at this construction site video, right? Like maybe you've got like a head-mounted GoPro or chest-mounted GoPro, and you are a site supervisor as walking around seeing construction happening. And then you're basically saying, hey, I want you to go through and find any instances where you see things that are dangerous or good and throw it into a spreadsheet. So it's taking intermittent screenshots, it's opening up like an Excel clone, LibreOffice, and filling these out for you as it goes along, right? Of course, this is also drastically sped up, but it gives you a sense for what you can do with these type of agentic systems. And I'm getting very excited about this future. Similarly, Google had made a bunch of different announcements in December, and one of them was Project Mariner. Basically, it's an AI agent that can use Chrome for you, right? Like it's using your instance of Chrome, but it is taking intermittent screenshots, sending that up to Gemini, and then deciding what to do next. Now, their benchmarks looked very, very impressive, but they do have certain limitations that already make it less appealing than what OpenAI rolled out. For starters, it only works in one active tab, so you can't be like multitasking in Chrome. And it requires obviously confirmations for sensitive actions, but that's no different than OpenAI. But the fact that you're limited to one active tab is a little bit annoying. And so this is only in a trusted tester program right now, which I can neither confirm or deny that I'm a part of. But what I can say is that it works really well based on what they're showing us. And the whole idea is rather the same. Is like, let's take advantage of native multimodality. It can understand everything on your screen, all the pixels, rather than parsing the HTML itself. It's like just looking at your browser window and taking a bunch of actions for you. So, you know, it could be very interesting for tasks where you, let's say, want to scrape stuff or you're searching for something, or multi-step actions across multiple websites that might be rather annoying for you to go through step by step. Now, these benchmarks are actually pretty cool, but what's funny is this isn't out in the wild. And so ChatGPT's operator is only available to the pro tier, which is $200 a month. And so rather cost prohibitive for a bunch of people. Now, in this, as I mentioned, China has absolutely been freaking crushing it, right? Like if you look at the price performance ratio of a DeepSeek V3, we're getting performance that's better than Claude 3.5 Sonnet, right? This vertical axis. And then the cost is like very, very close to GPT-4o Mini. It's even cheaper than Llama, right? Or Qwen, one of the other Chinese models that's out there. So really insane to be hitting this sort of like triangle of optimal price performance ratio that China is going after. And this makes sense, right? Because of course, they are being drastically restricted from taking advantage of all these Nvidia GPUs. We have compute in spades here in the US, and so they need to be compute poor. And let me just say, constraints breed creativity. Now, not only is that wild, it's actually really even wilder that basically DeepSeek R1, which is their equivalent of an O1 style model, actually shows you the detailed chain of thought. Now, you can't go in and ask some questions about Tiananmen Square or something like that. You're obviously not going to get great answers, but everything else you seem to get directly from the model. Now, of course, OpenAI folks are saying, oh, well, not all chain of thought is made the same way. But I think this is really funny, right? That OpenAI is like, we're not going to show you the internal reasoning because of safety and competitive concerns. And oh my God, going a step further and saying that prompts that try to access the hidden chain of thought are monitored and users may face warnings and loss of access that violate this policy. Absolutely absurd. So as Mark Andreessen eloquently put it, we are living in a timeline where a Chinese company is keeping the original mission of OpenAI alive, truly open frontier research that empowers all. And that is indeed very wild. And in a quick response to this, Sam Altman announced that the free tier of ChatGPT is going to get O3 Mini for free. Makes a ton of sense. And let me tell you, they should absolutely be worried, because guess who is climbing up the productivity iOS app charts? It's DeepSeek. Hilarious to me that, again, a Chinese company is crushing it and is actually the one that's giving us an open source model here too. Absolutely wild. It's so funny. Going back to what Jim Fan is saying, DeepSeek R1 not only open sources a barrage of models, but also spills all the training secrets. That is exactly what OpenAI set out to do. And then as a bunch of emails revealed, including emails with Ilya Sutskever, that they decided that at some point when this technology becomes too powerful, we will no longer publish the science behind it, only the product. The Chinese say, screw that. We're going to be the open source epicenter and lean into the open internet and have people even in the US and Europe building around their models. So if you're referencing AI in terms of Chinese models, that is something that AI companies should be worried about. It is thus no surprise that tech CEOs are sounding the alarm on ByteDance.
That rivals OpenAI's O1 on several third-party performance benchmarks. But those two have something else besides performance in common that makes it starkly different than our American ones, and that is cost. They were many times cheaper to build and are many times cheaper to access. So developers are really interested in these models. Big American players, too, at Davos are taking note.
We should take the development out of China very, very seriously.
What we found is that DeepSeek, which is the leading Chinese AI lab, their model is actually the top performing or roughly on par with the best American models.
If the United States can't lead in this technology, we're going to be in a very bad place geopolitically.
Each of them extremely influential CEOs working in AI.
I just find this deeply amusing, to be honest, because it is not just the O1 reasoning model, even the focus of this video that I'm talking about, which is an agentic AI that can take control of your computer and execute arbitrary tasks for you. Guess what? TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, released a model called UI-TARS, which is a next-generation native GUI model designed to interact seamlessly with all sorts of GUIs using human-like perception, reasoning, and action capabilities. And critically, unlike the rest of the stuff out there, UI-TARS integrates all the key components, perception, reasoning, grounding, and memory within a single VLM, enabling end-to-end task automation without predefined workflows or manual rules. And guess what? If you look at all the benchmarks, turns out UI-TARS is coming out on top. So what exactly is UI-TARS here? What's also cool about this is that it can take control of your entire computer, right? Like Project Mariner by Google DeepMind is restricted to an active Chrome tab. Obviously, ChatGPT's new operator functionality is like a virtual machine where you're using a Chrome browser in the cloud. Cloud computer use can actually use stuff on your computer. True, but very much developer-centric and not nearly as accurate as these guys. Holy crap. And so here it's doing very similar tasks that I was walking you through earlier. It's like showing you it's a reasoning and it's going and, basically booking a flight for you. Seattle to New York City in this case. Okay, cool. It's clicking and doing this task. By the way, as this is happening, one of the other things with Mariner is like, it's very slow. It's very slow and deliberate. And that's maybe how they've got much better numbers compared to some of the other options out there. But again, I am just in awe of what China is doing, right? Like, I don't know how much compute went into training this specific model. But what is clear is if the US thinks that the only way to stop China is to restrict their supply of GPUs, well, clearly they are sorely mistaken. We need to come up with real innovative techniques to take advantage of the compute that is at our disposal, because otherwise China's just going to find ways around it, whether it's algorithmic or architectural breakthroughs to basically deal with the fact that they're quote unquote compute poor. Well, turns out that you actually are a lot more innovative if you have these constraints bestowed upon you. There we go. It's like looking at different types of flights. And it's completed the task. Let's see what else it shows. Great. You can even tell it to do things in PowerPoint. So this is another cool thing that I like is like these agents feel like you're standing over the shoulder of a human that's using your computer. And as you're asking it to do tasks like, hey, I want you to do this in Photoshop. Now I want you to export the PSD and open it up into After Effects and pull out all the layers. You can start basically saying things. You're like the conductor of the orchestra. And the computer is just doing everything for you. That to me is a very, very exciting future. Even for like real-time dynamic use, though the opportunities for batch tasks, let's say you wanted to do like 10 things as a standard operating procedure, let's say to update your Notion or your task management list or book travel plans on demand at a regular cadence or like order your groceries as sort of a batch job is equally interesting too. So how trippy is this going to get? Everyone's losing their minds over like Cursor Composer and things like that. You're basically going to have an AI using an AI assistant tool. It's going to be AIs all the way down to get things done in the real world. And that I'm super, super excited about. Now, in case you missed it, a very minified, simplified version of this is exactly what Perplexity is trying to do on Android, where they do have more OS level control to do these simplified actions for you. It's basically finding different types of songs. Hey, like book an Uber for me, book the best Japanese restaurant. And then it can go about doing those things on your Android device using like OpenTable, Uber Eats, Spotify, Amazon, etc. And so I think that's also very cool and a step towards like what Apple Intelligence should have been on iOS. Hopefully Apple is seeing all of this and is like, hopefully had a rude awakening, and we'll see some drastic improvements in the upcoming Apple events, WWDC and so forth. Now, one thing I want to talk about is where this is going next. If you saw my previous video on Jensen Huang and Nvidia's big bet on physical AI, this is a chart that went super viral. And basically here we're talking about agentic AI as this current step where basically, an AI can perceive what's happening on your computer, decide a set of actions to take and then execute those actions and kind of do that in a recursive loop. Jensen made the analogy that basically that's going to go towards robotics, and robotics really do the same thing, right? Like you're perceiving and mapping the world, understanding what entities are within it, then you're deciding some set of actions to take, you execute those actions, perceive the impact of those actions, and keep doing that in a recursive loop. And so what I think is Claude computer use, where you're figuring out how to click 2D pixels on a screen, is all going to be very, very important for both AR, VR, and robotics. And this is where I want you to listen to what OpenAI's chief product officer had to say.
Humanoid robots?
Not this year.
Not this year. Okay, well, we got a year there. That's great. Next year?
I think, that's honestly, that will be the next big thing, whether it's us or anybody else. I think, first, AI, the most natural place for AI to really have major impact for all of us and how we use our time is in the digital realm, because these things are sort of digitally native, and it's the most natural place. But you start developing things like multimodality, the ability to speak, the ability to see, and start to understand the real world. Robotics is clearly the next thing. And so I think, again, whether it's us or somebody else, it's probably a couple years behind the current sort of revolution that we're going through. And I think this really will be a huge year for AI and for how it affects and improves all of our lives. My guess is robotics is like another 2 or 3 years beyond that, but
you guys are working on it too, right? You just restarted part of the research lab around robotics.
Yeah, we're starting to think about it. So, thinking like a small team dabbling to try and understand, is this really something is this an area where we can make a big impact? We have first-party products, right? We have ChatGPT, et cetera. We also offer a developer product.
Now, in case you missed it, OpenAI has started building out this robotics team. And essentially, the focus makes sense, right? If you're building multimodal AI systems, DeepMind is doing this too. The applications to robotics are immense. I would argue, again, like we explored in the last video, AR, VR being sort of a half robot where it has all the perception capabilities and the ability to tell you what action to take, but it's the human that takes that action, right? I think that's going to be a place where it makes a dent even sooner, because as the great Peter Thiel has often remarked, the world of bits seems to move a lot faster than the world of atoms. And in this case, XR devices are basically a halfway robot, as the VP of Omniverse from Nvidia said in my previous video. So now, of course, OpenAI started building out its robotics team, but this is also a place where China has a huge, huge advantage. So this is real video that you're seeing of deep robotics, right? Absolutely wild what they're doing. And so China's robotic prowess is absolutely insane. I could make a whole video just on DJI and the drone industry, but you probably already know that. But even when it comes to these other robotic form factors, they're crushing it. Now, of course, you can imagine doing a bunch of delightful stuff with this, a bunch of people's running around on a $1,200 robot dog. And what's cool is they're not just reverse engineering what the US teams are doing, they're finding new approaches, right? So instead of doing something like Monte Carlo tree search, just linearize the thought and do a good old fashioned autoregressive prediction. I mean, I don't even know what to say. It's just wild. So by the way, if you want to go deeper into what NVIDIA is doing with physical AI, robotics, and so forth, be sure to check that out. But I want to just wrap this up by saying that they are crushing it. I mean, I haven't seen such a natural walking demo from any US company thus far. So wild times ahead. Now, in the backdrop of all of this is the escalating tension with China. In many ways, the fate of the US and China is inextricably linked, right? Like the supply chain dependency, all of that stuff is just very, very clear. At the same time, we've seen what happened with TikTok. It nearly got banned, and then at the very last minute, Trump's like, oh, TikTok's back. Now let's see what comes out of like this 50-50 sale, like 50% to the US or whatever. So China is clearly a force to be reckoned with. And I think the US labs can't just say that China is like blindly copying, they're not innovating. They are clearly innovating across a bunch of different dimensions while leaning into their strengths where possible. I could make a whole video talking about why AI video models on the China side are just so good compared to something like a Runway or Luma. And I got into this in my hands-on review of Google Veo as well. But to wrap things up, there's one big problem with agentic AI. When you have AI taking control of your computer, usually it's doing one of two ways. One is that it's taking screenshots and sending them up to the cloud for processing and then taking action locally on your device. This is the approach that Claude Computer is using. This is the approach that Project Mariner is using. On the other hand, OpenAI is saying, hey, we're going to take more of an approach like Rabbit, where you're basically controlling a virtual machine, a Chrome browser inside their computer. And so the big question here really is privacy. And everyone's thinking about exactly this is like, if you've got so many, what are various ways for these companies to glean even more insights about you? When Microsoft rolled out Recall, where, hey, locally, we're going to be taking intermittent screenshots, it turned out initially the database was all completely unencrypted and in plain text. And just to remind you, here's what the pitch was.
One of the dreams we've always had is, how do we introduce memory, right? Photographic memory into what you do on the PC. And now we have it. So it's called Recall. It's not keyword search, right? It's semantic search over all your history. And it's not just about any document. We can recreate moments from the past, essentially.
Here's how it works. Windows constantly takes screenshots of what's on your screen, then uses a generative AI model right on the device, along with the NPU, to process all that data and make it searchable, even photos.
Now, see, the issue here really isn't whether it's done locally, on device, or in the cloud. Really, these companies will be figuring out how to derive as many insights as possible. So imagine all your activity locally as sort of crude oil. Could you distill that down? Could you take just the finest refinery gas and skim that off and send that up to the cloud, taking far, far less storage too, right? Like all the data stays on your device, all the screenshots, but all the insights go up to the cloud. In other cases here, the screenshots are just going straight up to a cloud, and that's going to be subject to the terms of service there. Typically, there's always a carve out in these terms of service to be able to use user activity to improve products and services. That means training models typically as well. So as people use these agentic AI systems to set up more complex tasks, the models are going to benefit. And that's just how this is going to work out. Now, of course, given all the fear mongering and rising tensions between the US and China, even though UI-TARS can run locally, a lot of people are going to be a little bit apprehensive to install it. Like my buddy Alex is asking, like, are you going to be installing it? Oh, there you go. Top AI models with China control of your PC. What could wrong? I'm in. Which is funny because in contrast, most people will absolutely trust OpenAI to just sign in with their details and just do whatever you need to do there or turn on this feature in Microsoft. And so what do you think about this? Like, where are the privacy concerns really? And how do we balance sort of the benefits of these agentic AI workflows that are clearly going to be beneficial with the privacy implications of all of this stuff? And I think that's going to be the next big question that we need to contend with as we roll out these agents in the world of bits. Now, in the world of atoms, when you've got robots roaming your house, that's a whole new set of concerns entirely, but also a whole new set of opportunities. So as we head towards this dual future, we are going to see a lot more agentic products hitting the scene this year. And I'll be there covering it all for you. So if you enjoy this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more content like this. And if you enjoy stuff like this, consider checking out spatialintelligence.ai, where I send these sort of updates neatly to your inbox. Thanks, Bilaval signing off, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Cheers.